What's going on, guys? The NHL Betting Market video for January the 15th, 2021. Fat Guy, let's start off with the Penguins Flyers. 718 bets so far. Flyers open at -108, bet down to -103. Very similar line movement and line to their first meeting, which was, I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before. 55%
opening game.
And if I'm not mistaken, even the money and bet percentages are fairly the same as well. Flyers 55% of bets, but the Penguins have 64% of the money on the OU or on the money percentage.
Yeah, that's I guess it's lateral. I have a feeling that like the threshold, because like when you shift a line, it's not just like, say I get 50% of bets, but 50% of what, right? Like 50% of 1,000, that's not going to move too much, right? So I would imagine, like, comparatively out of all the professional sports, this has the lowest handle. So like 64% of the money, but 64% of a larger chunk. That's why it's probably going to move it just a little bit less. And I would imagine too that hockey's, like anything, they're going to get more bets closer too. So it's 64% of a much smaller handle than what would be in the total aspect, because it's probably going to be like 3,000 bets, Big Rise, so we're not even a third of the way there.
Yeah, even if that, I can take a look.
2,500. I feel like this is more of a popular crew. Penguins, Flyers, a little bit more historic. The Battle of Pennsylvania, as you could say.
Yeah, their first game had 1,800 bets, so I'd expect anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 would probably be my guess.
I thought it would have been more, but my mistake, based on that benchmark, still could come to fruition. Either way, I just feel there's a little bit of a lower money total. It does make sense, but what about the OU here, Big Rye?
The OU, it opened at 6. The under was 6 -102. It still is at 6, but it's favored the under as far as the juice moving a few points, a few extra points too, considering that the line came out as -114 juice total, and now it's at -112. So they did open up with a little bit more juice, which is something that we noted in earlier NHL betting market videos. So -106 juice is going to be the even benchmark for Pinnacle at closing lines. But the under still, the juice is favored the under from -102 to -105. Despite the line just moving slightly as far as the juice moving slightly towards the under, 21% of bets and 21% of the money has been placed on the under. And another interesting thing to note, this is outside of this game, but the OU markets have received 72% of bets have been placed on overs, which is very, very interesting. And when you look at these, 79%, 69%, 83%, 91 and 72%. So we're still continuing with very, very high bet percentages on all of these overs.
And I mean, they've been rewarded, it feels like, too. A lot of high-scoring games. I'm not sure where they've all landed on the total. I don't have those figures in front of me, but that would also increase the sentiment that perhaps is a little bit of an overestimation. Onto the puck line here. So the Flyers are -1.5 goal favorites. That's what we mean by puck line, at +205 juice to open, and now they've currently moved to +229 juice, making them a smaller underdog to win by 2, despite winning by 2 in their first game, which is probably a benchmark that people are using. But it looks like they do like the Penguins a little bit more, considering the bet percentage is 45%, yet 73% of the money. So money talks, and it is favoring the Penguins to cover that 1.5 point puck line by a considerable margin of -263, which is, I mean, I guess it makes sense here because the Penguins are also favored in the money line, and there was a shift there, but that's a pretty small one. Whereas this, I guess 23 263 is close to, I mean, not, it's sort of close to 3-107. So interesting stuff here. Seems like there's more money and more interest on the Penguins than an over.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that the juice on the puck line has moved in the Penguins' favor, but the money percentage in the puck line there's not too much to talk about. Like, that's pretty much like a split 50-50. Despite like the -263 lines up with that 73% pretty closely. Whereas the money line, with the Penguins receiving 64% of the money on the money line, Definitely the books are taking a little bit more exposure on the Penguins money line. On to the next game, fat guy. Blackhawks Lightning, 756 bets early on in this game. Lightning open minus 286. They've been bet down to minus 246. 65% of bettors and 98% of the money is on Tampa Bay at home.
Seems like a dubious figure considering the that would be a massive reverse line movement here, Big Rye, if that were the case. That's why that figure is even more dubious to me, because you're going to drop at 40 points the money line despite receiving 98% of the bets. I don't know. That just seems weird. So I'm not sure I'm going to put too much stock into that money percentage.
Well, I was just double checking to see, because the one thing with NHL games that we haven't experienced too much with other sports is that goalie changes could make very drastic line movements. So I was just double checking, but Vasilevsky is still slated to start according to what I'm looking at right now. So the line movement doesn't correlate with a goalie change. So this means that there are some other factors that have helped push this line towards the Blackhawks, away from the Lightning. Obviously, we don't have the full injury reports on both teams, but something to keep your eye on, because something moved that line. So if you can't find something obvious, it might be a good indicator that there is value on the Blackhawks, considering the books are taking so much exposure on the Lightning already and have still moved the line in the Blackhawks' favor to encourage even more bets on Tampa Bay.
That is. Go ahead.
No, you jump in.
No. Let's hit the puck. Or sorry, let's hit the OU.
So the OU opened at 6.5. It's been bet down to 6. The juice, though, was heavily on the under at open at 6.5, and now it's heavy on the over at 6, which makes sense. So this might not be that much of a change. The interesting part, though, is that so many people have been betting the over. So to push this down half a goal and say essentially that a game that finishes in 6, even if you bet it now, would be a push, is interesting, considering they could probably make a couple extra bucks keeping it at that 6.5. 69% of bets on the over, 96% of the money on the over.
Yeah, but they're also going to make way more. Perhaps they'd rather the risk of lowering the number and hiring the juice. That seems like a very book move. So interesting stuff, though. We do need to know what is the value of 6.5 to 6, though, to make a strong inferences, which will be more of an off-season topic, or as we go along. Like you said, we're learning as we do. That's why we're inspecting the market rather than promoting betting on either side. And
then the puck line for this, I found Tampa Bay big favorites, obviously Stanley Cup champions last year. The Lightning open minus 1.5 at minus 119. They've been bet down to minus 1.5 at minus 106, despite receiving 48% of bets, 99% of the money. So the books are taking quite a bit of even more exposure, really, on the puck line than they are on the money line for Tampa Bay to win by 2 or more goals.
Yeah, why he's saying they're taking more exposure comparatively, like maybe not dollar for dollar wise, or maybe not gross dollars, but dollar for dollar wise, it is worse, considering it's the juice on the Lightning minus 1.5 is minus 106, whereas minus 246 on the Lightning, right? So that payout is going to be so much less on the money line side as opposed to the puck line side.
On to the next game. Only 567 bets so far for this Maple Leafs Senators game. The Leafs opened at minus 195, bet up to minus 199, despite receiving 73%. Well, because they have received 73% of bets and 86% of the money. So some exposure there on the Maple Leafs from the books early on.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I mean it's a pretty small move, right? Minus 195 to minus 199. Like, it's not that, like, that's the thing when I see that, like, it doesn't really going to de-incentivize a square. They're going to bet the Leafs, and is that really going to incentivize them to bet the Senators? So I always like following these types of things to see what happens. Only 567 bets, so even lower than a lot of these other games aside from the Blues Avalanche, and the lowest of the early docket games.
And the OU open at 6.5, still 6.5. Juice has moved in the unders favor just slightly. 83% of bettors and 68% of the money has been placed on the over in this OU and the Maple Leaf Senators game.
Just another theme that Big Rye has been highlighting is a lot of money, a lot of volume on the over, and they seem to get that. And this looks like a reverse line movement, Big Rye. This does.
It sure
Uh,
does. It's just like the OU for the Pens Flyers, which is interesting to note. So the juice is slightly moved in the under's favor, despite more bets and more money being placed on the over in both of these games.
this is usually a marquee of a sharp because the or sharp betting is the under is garnering roughly 2 times the amount of money per person. So it's usually to keep a note, and also too think about it. There's always when things are like a lot of the games are high scoring, which just at a cursory glance from my baboon memory is it does seem like things are a little bit higher scoring. Some overtime games too, there's been that, which is always going to push the total up by at least one. That kind of sticks in the mind, sticks in the craw of the sharp, and they're very results oriented. And that's another way of going is you make good decisions. You don't base anything off of results because the results will take care of themselves in the long run, trust me. And so perhaps there is a lineage to unders going forward, considering there has been a over expectation of high scoring games, I feel, so far.
Now, I find this puck line fascinating. So the Senators opened at +1.5 and -137. They're still at +1.5, but the line has moved up to -147. They have received 72% of bets, but only 4% of the money, and that line has moved to encourage more people to bet on the Toronto Maple Leafs -1.5 on the puck line. What to make of this, fat guy?
It's weird. 72% though. I mean, that's why that money percentage is really dubious. Because really, 72% of people are betting Senators +1.5, right? Like it seems bizarre, right? Like I would have thought it would have been the other way. And also too, like this would be a very strong reverse line movement if that money figure would be nice. So it's hard for me to dive in and give too much stock when I find that money percentage very dubious in this application, unfortunately.
And then on to the Capitals, Sabres, fat guy, your Capitals, 794 bets early on in this game. And let's focus on the Caps. They opened at -122. They've been bet up to -136, 59% of bets and 67% of the money on the money line, helping push that line up for the Capitals.
Big Rye outing me. I've been a Capitals fan since I was about 9, 10 years old, like Olaf Kolzig. I like big goalies, and I was a big kid, and I was a big goalie. So Capitals, of course, being the furthest away from me, and that's why I like them. And off to the personal note, on to the professional note, -122 to -136 was a lateral movement, considering 67% of the money, 59% of the people. Makes complete sense. This makes the most sense of, I think, the market so far. Maybe the Penguins Flyers is a little bit closer. Conversely, on the puck line, the Capitals have went from -1.5 to +186 to -1.5, +170 with 42% of the bets. So, but I would imagine perhaps maybe it's more of the money. That 100% figure is just a default figure, so we don't actually have it. So it is dubious, like a lot of the ones so we can't really glean too much from that. So I feel like the public does like the Capitals, and the Sabres are probably not favored in that application. Oh, don't forget too. Sorry, take away the Big Rye because I'm going to circle around to this topic again.
Well, what I find interesting for Moneyline and Puckline is similar. I forget which game it was earlier, but the Moneyline movement for the Capitals doesn't line up with the Puckline movement for the Capitals.
Yeah.
So it's, or actually it does. Sorry, take that back. The Puckline has moved in the favor of the Capitals.
Yeah,
so ignore that point. On to the OU. It opened at 6 at -104. It's been bet, well, it stayed at 6, but the juice has been bet up to -109. This is fascinating. I don't even know if we could put any stock into this. 91% of bets are on the over, but 95% of the money is on the under. So those are very drastically different spread bet percent or money over under bet percentages and over under money percentages.
Yeah, the contrast is massive. That's why I find the money percentage to be very dubious. Like I said, if I were to find something that is interesting, it does seem like it would be like like the unders are starting to look interesting, considering the overwhelming demand for overs. But in this case, the money percentages suggests 95% of the money on the under, which is really difficult to attain considering the low totals, low betting limits. Because you remember, like, you can attain this type of disparity when the betting limits are really large, right? Because, for instance, if a square bets, it doesn't matter what the betting limits are, the square's never going to scrape at it because they're going to bet like 20 to $100, right? Whereas the sharp is going to bet maximum, right? A lot of the time. So, like, that could be 2,000 on some of these early markets, up to 50,000 close to game, right? Aren't that many 50,000 bettors? Don't think that that's common. I would imagine there's only a handful in the world that actually do it professionally and keep their jobs. That's a whole nother ball of how difficult that is to do. But there are a lot of sharp dime bettors, I can tell you that right now, that are betting in the thousands, right? So even then, if the limit's only like $2,000, right, like that's going to be lower than some unit sizing for even the medium sharps, right? So the disparity is a lot harder to achieve on these early markets, especially NHL, which does tend to have lower limits than other ones. So that's why it makes the money percentage all the more dubious from the third party that we attain it from, because I mean you can create disparity. One guy's betting 100 and one guy's betting 40,000. Yeah, you can create it, but when it's 100 to like $2,000 or $3,000, it's a little bit harder to do that, especially to drum it up with just 9%. So unless you have complete sharp uniformity, I do find that money percentage a dubious figure.
And then on to the final game of the night, 9 p.m. Eastern time start. Only 453 bets. I think that's the least amount of bets we've looked at today for either sport. But we have the Blues Avalanche. The money line is still very fresh. Avalanche, their money line actually hasn't changed from open. It's still minus 144. 59% of bettors and 51% of the money is on the Avalanche. And then if we jump over to the puck line, for the Blues, they opened as plus 1.5 point dogs on the puck line on the road, minus 181, bet up to minus 187. 55% of bettors, 8% of the money on the Blues puck line. Wow.
Sorry. So this is fine for the money line, 59.41 in money, and it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. So I mean, I guess there's a 2% gap, and then when they switched their juice, they just added 2 points to the Blues. That makes complete uniformity sense. However, on the flip side, though, like, why did Avalanche, if they are getting 92% of the money, why are they getting better odds to cover that 1.5 goal puck line? That's interesting. Like, that's why that figure is dubious as well. I know I'm using that word a lot, but it's the best one I can concisely describe this type of situation. So they're de-incentivizing betting the Blues despite getting more money on the Avalanche, which is interesting to say the least.
And then the OU for this game, it opened at 6, still at 6. The juices favored the under from minus 114 to minus 117. 28% of bettors and 59% of the money is on the under, helping push it down 3 points on the juice.
Yeah, this does seem lateral for the most part, but what makes me put intrigue on the under, much like the Maple Leaf Senators under, is because they don't really care who's betting one side. If there's 100, okay, here's a good example. Say they're offering 2 games at minus 110. One side bets 1.1 million. One side bets 1.1 million. If one guy bet 1.1 million on one side and 10,000 people bet 1.1 million on the other, they don't care. They're getting $100,000 no matter what. What is interesting here is because of how the money balances, you can figure out sometimes what sharps are doing. And this is an indication, if these money figures are true, which I do believe they are, they don't look dubious at all to me. 28% is accruing for 59% of the money. So that's just over 2 to 1. So the 1/4 of the population, 28% is putting up 59% of the money. What does that tell you? They're with this minus 117, that is close to a balance for the book, but there is one side that's probably more sharp than the other, and that is most certainly the under. And if you can say, oh, fat guy, I'm going to get a bum line. Well, that's the thing. What we're doing is chasing steam. We're doing grinder work. So we're trying to figure out where the sharps are, and we're trying to follow them. So what you do is they do all the homework. Like, you think this is work? Imagine doing handicapping. It takes endless hours and dedication. And these aren't guys that have other jobs. This is what they do all day. And they've been preparing all preseason, all season. Not that there is no preseason, but all previous season for these types of things, and then they adjust and they learn little tidbits as they go along, and then usually by the end of the season all the meat has gone off the bone. But in the beginning, they're all of their hypotheses are usually at their strongest. So perhaps this one is on the under. Despite this is the other thing about results, you can get bad results and make great decisions. It happens. If you've ever played poker, trust me, you can find that out. So there is possibly some value on this under at 6 minus 117.
And that's it for the NHL betting market for January the 15th. Good luck in your guys' wagers.